fellow Americans.
You might be wondering, why in the world is there a 30-minute countdown before the show starts? Well, we actually start live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time, so this whole 30-minute countdown is a chance for YouTube and Rumble to send out their alerts and notifications, so we encourage you to gather up and hang out with everyone in the chat room. So every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time is when we do this show live. You can join us for the countdown if you like, or just set your clock and reminder that at 4 p.m. Eastern is when we go live. You can also make sure you subscribe and turn on that bell notification, so hopefully you will get a notification.
What do you have to say about dictators of countries like Indonesia, who we sell weapons to, yet they are slaughtering people in East Timor? What do you have to say about Israel, who is slaughtering Palestinians, who impose martial law? What do you have to say about that? Those are our allies. Why do we sell weapons to these countries? Why do we support them? Why do we bomb Iraq when it commits similar problems?
There are various examples of things that are not right in this world, and the United States is trying. I really am surprised that people feel that it is necessary to defend the rights of Saddam Hussein, when what we ought to be thinking about is how to make sure that he does not use weapons of mass destruction.
I'd like to...
Who are shouting, just a moment.
I'm not defending him in the least. What I am saying is that there needs to be consistent application of U.S. foreign policy. We cannot support people who are committing the same violations because they are political allies. That is not acceptable. We cannot violate UN resolutions when it is convenient to us. You're not answering my question, Madam Albright.
You briefed the press, did you not, when you were there?
Well, I had several jobs. One of my jobs was that of analyst. I also was an interrogator and indeed briefed the press when we, the CIA, wanted to circulate disinformation on a particular issue. Disinformation is not necessarily a lie. It may be a half-truth. And we would pick out a journalist. I would go do the briefing and hope that he would put the information in print.
What was your percentage of success?
We were pretty successful in planning information of a rather rarefied nature. For instance, if we wanted to get across to the American public that the North Vietnamese were building up their force structure in South Vietnam, I would go to a journalist and advise him that in the past 6 months, X number of North Vietnamese forces had come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail system through southern Laos. Now, there is no way a journalist can check that information. That's data derived from radio intercepts, spy in the sky photography. So either he goes with the information or he doesn't, and ordinarily or usually the journalist would go with it because it looked like some kind of exclusive. Go after these gentlemen. I would be directed to cultivate them, to spend time with them at the Caravel Hotel or the Continental Hotel, to socialize with them, and slowly but surely to try to gain their confidence by dolloping out valid information which was true. And then I would drop into a conversation the data that we wanted to get across, which might not be true. One piece of data, for instance, that we managed to plant in the New Yorker magazine had to do with a supposed North Vietnamese effort in 1973 to develop airfields along the border of South Vietnam. The reason we wanted to plant this information was that we were trying to persuade the U.S. Congress that Saigon should continue to get a great deal of aid, and that the North Vietnamese were the chief violators of the ceasefire accord. That was printed in the New Yorker magazine under the byline of Robert Chaplin, as indeed was a great deal of such information which we tried to circulate.
Frank, a two-part question. What were the objectives of or what was the objective of the CIA? What about the moral implications of what you were doing in feeding this information? Did the objective override the moral implications, moral problems?
Well, the objective of the agency in general is to generate intelligence and get it back to Washington, to get at the truth and make sure the policymakers understand it. When you plant disinformation, you are diverging from that objective, and I think probably in retrospect it was very counterproductive. I am, as an ex-CIA agent, opposed to the disinformation activities in which I was involved. I admit that I was involved, and I think it served no useful purpose. Propagandizing the American public or Congress is not the CIA's job. As to the morality of what the CIA was doing or that particular activity, the war was a very relative thing. It was a relativist environment, and morality seldom came into play when you were operating in the field. In my estimation, a CIA man should be amoral. That may sound pretty shocking to somebody, but what if my morality were that of a Nazi or agent, if you will? You wouldn't want me to be your intelligence officer. Keep the morals out of intelligence. Keep the truth in, and stay away from disinformation.
It would have been more appropriate for Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, to address this House according to Article 144, an article which was specifically designed to debate violations of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, which is clearly the case with Mr. Trudeau. Then again, a Prime Minister who openly admires the Chinese basic dictatorship, who tramples on fundamental rights by persecuting and criminalizing his own citizens as terrorists just because they dared to stand up to his perverted concept of democracy, should not be allowed to speak in this House at all. Mr. Trudeau, you are a disgrace for any democracy. Please spare us your presence. Thank you.
Colleagues, but the answer to war is not more war, it's peace. And peace isn't delivered by the barrel of a gun, it's delivered by diplomacy, by dialogue. You can wish away your continent's history, but we share a continent with Russia. We will sit down with Russia. There will be a negotiated peace, and this organization should be promoting it earlier rather than delaying it and making sure that more Ukrainians die. Your feigning of sympathy rings hollow. It makes me sick, to be honest with you.
we become involved when disinformation poses a threat to the security of our country. It is when there's a connectivity to a threat to our country. It could be a threat, a connectivity to violence. And what this working group does, is precisely what I would think you would want it to do, which is to take a look at the work, the disinformation work that our department has done and ask the following questions. Do we have policies? Do we have guardrails? Do we have standards?
But here's the problem.
Ensure,
We can't even agree. We can't even agree what disinformation is. You can't even agree that it was disinformation, that the Russians fed information to the Steele dossier. If you can't agree to that, how are we ever going to come to an agreement on what is disinformation so you can police it on social media?
Senator, I have 2 points, if I may finish. Number one, that what this office, what this working group does, because it's not an office, what this working group does is ensure that there are guardrails, definitions, standards to make sure that the free speech rights, the civil rights, civil liberties, and privacy rights of individuals.
So do you think COVID disinformation threatens our national security?
And number two, if I may, Senator, and number two, is it your proposition that when the cartels spread disinformation with respect to our immigration policies to try to lure vulnerable migrants to our border illegally?
I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Are you familiar with McNamara, the Pentagon Papers? Are you familiar with George W. Bush and the weapons of mass destruction? Are you familiar with Iran-Contra? I mean, think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech. You think we can't determine, speech by traffickers is disinformation? You think the American people are so stupid they need you to tell them what the truth is? You can't even admit what the truth is with the Steele dossier. I don't trust government to figure out what the truth is. Government is largely disseminating disinformation.
Hey everyone, just as a reminder, our show starts at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, just a few minutes from now, but I should remind you that we have a daily newsletter. It's totally free. Natalie and I work very hard on it every morning over our cup of coffee, putting the stories together that we think are important that the mainstream media is going to ignore. All you need to do is go to our website. It's just redacted.inc. Put in your email address. We won't ever sell your email to anybody. And then you'll receive a welcome email. And all you need to do is verify that email, and 7 a.m. Eastern Time is when we send out our daily newsletter. And it's about 5 or 10 minutes in length that you can read it over your cup of coffee. And like I said, we cover 4 or 5 of the big stories of the day, plus a couple of things you might have missed while you were sleeping. We try to have some fun with it, add a little humor into it. And again, it's a great way to start off your morning. But it's also a great way for us to stay connected with you as well, because we've been banned and blocked on some of these platforms before, where we haven't been allowed to post anything, not even a community post. So the only way for us to stay connected with you is through our newsletter. We were able to send out a newsletter and say, hey everyone, we're blocked for the next week, and let you know what was actually going on with our show. Anyway, go to redacted.inc and sign up for the free newsletter, and it'll be posted first thing in the morning over your cup of coffee.
This is a bit of an aside, but in terms of how you think about problem sets, when I was a cadet, what's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the CI director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire We had entire training courses.
We had a good discussion on ensuring global energy security and adequate oil supplies to support global economic growth, and that will begin shortly. I'm doing all I can to increase the supply for the United States of America, which I expect to happen. The Saudis share that urgency, and based on our discussions today, I expect we'll see further steps in the coming weeks.
Are you worried about it?
One of the hopeful things that I've discovered is that nearly every war that has started in the past 50 years has been a result of media lies. The media could have stopped it if they had searched deep enough. If they hadn't reprinted government propaganda, they could have stopped it. But what does that mean? Well, that means basically populations don't like wars. And populations have to be fooled into wars. Populations don't willingly and with open eyes go into a war. So if we have a good media environment, then we'll also have a peaceful environment.
Killed a million people in Iraq.
That is a separate...
You killed a million people in Iraq. It's incredible that you have the brass neck to be sitting here now urging another Iraq war.
George,
after
if
what
I
you've
was
already
still in
done.
Parliament, I...
There can be no doubt that Saddam Hussein has biological weapons and the capability to rapidly produce more, many more. And he has the ability to dispense these lethal poisons and diseases in ways that can cause massive death and destruction. If biological weapons seem too terrible to contemplate, chemical weapons are equally chilling. UNMOVIC already laid out much of this, and it is documented for all of us to read in UNSCOM's 1999 report on the subject. If we consider just one category of missing weaponry, 6,500 bombs from the Iran-Iraq war, UNMOVIC says the amount of chemical agent in them would be on the order of 1,000 tons. These quantities of chemical weapons are now unaccounted for. Dr. Blick says, quipped that, quote, mustard gas is not marmalade. You are supposed to know what you did with it. We believe Saddam Hussein knows what he did with it, and he has not come clean to the international community. We have evidence these weapons existed. What we don't have is evidence from Iraq that they have been destroyed or where they are. That is what we are still waiting for.
Okay, inspection worth doing, everybody's agreed it's worth doing, and it gets stopped.
Yes, sir.
At that moment, we're an automatic pilot as far as you're concerned. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now, I respect that. But now, it seems to me the Secretary of State might have a slightly different problem. Secretary of State might be sitting there and saying, now look over there on that side. Now, I remember so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and the 12 people on this side, they're all the ones that said they didn't want to use force. Now, I'm going to have to go tell the president now that we should, or Secretary Cohen, unleash whatever it takes to get it done. And our military assessment is the same as the majors. The majors' assessment is, privately held but publicly acknowledged later, that airstrikes alone aren't going to do this. Saddam's not going to cave on this. So, now here's the deal. I recommended the president have at it and let the chips fall where they may. A reasonable position for the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State to take. But I respectfully suggest, Major, I respectfully suggest they have a responsibility slightly above your pay grade. Slightly above your pay grade. To decide whether or not to take the nation to war alone. Or to take the nation to war partway. Or to take the nation to war halfway. That's a real tough decision. That's why they get paid the big bucks. That's why they get the limos and you don't. I mean this sincerely. I'm not trying to be flip. Because I think, and that's why I said at the outset, the reason why I'm glad you did what you did, we should come to our milk. We should make a decision. But in terms of whether the Secretary of State has no more to consider than you do as the arms inspector, you didn't get in, didn't get my job done, get me in. Period. You made the deal, right? That's the deal. A deal's a deal. Get me in. Scott Ritter, I'm ready to go. It's not how it works. Now, maybe it should work that way. But wouldn't you acknowledge that if you were President of the United States or the Secretary of State, you'd sit there and say, now, okay, old Scotty boy didn't get in. We said he should get in. We want him to get in. It's important that he does get in. They're not going to let him in, so what are we going to do now? We know that France and Russia aren't going to be with us. We're quite confident China's not. We've already run those traps. They're not there. We're not sure where the United States Senate is, but have at it, boys. Go get them. And by the way, Scott and the boys say air power's not enough. I think it's a legitimate debate, Scott, Major. I think it's a legitimate debate. But I don't think we should be putting it in the context of you have somebody up there at state saying, look, how can we weasel out of this agreement? We want to let this guy out there hanging. We're not this. It's a very practical political decision. Same kind of decision General Powell made. Same kind of decision President Bush made. Every president, every Secretary of State has to do it. Like I said, they get paid more than you. Their job's a hell of a lot more complicated than yours. They may have made the wrong decision, and you brought it to light. We should address it. We should say straight up where we are, and we should do it. And for that, I thank you. But it's above your pay grade.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon, and one of the generals called me in. He said, sir, you got to come in and talk to me a sec. He says, we've made the decision we're going to war with Iraq. I said, we're going to war with Iraq? Why? He said, I don't know. He said, I guess they don't know what else to do. He said, I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we got a good military and we can take down governments. And he said, I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail. So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. He reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper. He said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
Hey everyone, Clayton here. The show is going to start at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I should remind you that we have a VIP community. It's our Redacted Rebel VIP community. Now, this show is totally free, what you're watching right now, right? You can subscribe here on YouTube and Rumble, totally free. But if you'd like to support independent journalism, we are run by you. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do this show. We wouldn't be able to hire the team that we have. We wouldn't be able to afford the servers that we have. We wouldn't be able to afford the reporters that we have, the team that we have. So you can support us by going to redacted.inc, and on the right side of your screen, you'll see a VIP community button. Just click that, and for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support us. We put out exclusive content, early interviews that no one else will see, live streams just for our VIP Rebel community. So again, it's totally free to watch this show. But if you do want to support independent journalism, we would really appreciate it. Come on over to redacted.inc, click on that community button, and decide if you want to sign up or not. It's totally up to you. We thank you. And meanwhile, the show will start in just a few moments at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the President. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Welcome, everyone, into Redacted on this, what is it, Wednesday?
It's Wednesday.
Wednesday. I can't keep track of the days. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natalie Morris.
And on this show, we tend to cover the stories the mainstream media does not. We navigate this crazy clown world together, you and I, and you and me and you.
Yes.
Like all of us. I got an email, a kind email from a viewer this morning that wrote to me and said, thank you for helping to kind of make sense of this crazy world. I said, yes, it is a clown world, but we're all together here as we try to figure all of this out.
That's exactly true. And today we're going to talk about things that may blow your mind, but they're real in this world. And so we got to get through it. My mom says, I don't know how you cover these types of stories. You know why? Because then afterwards I go and watch Polka on Instagram.
Well, I did an interview earlier today that's going to come out as a redacted conversation. And it's so troubling and so incredibly important. I mean, this woman lost her husband, and like, this is the type of story that, like, yeah, it's incredibly troubling, but we all need to hear about it, and the mainstream media doesn't talk about it, and big pharmaceutical companies suppress it. So it's our job here to send the message, to get it out there, and you guys share it as much as you can. Hopefully we can make a change somehow. I don't know, we hope we can, at least.
All right. Well, what we're going to talk about today is a possible military coup from powers that absolutely do not want another Trump presidency. Is there a force working for that? We're also going to talk about how Europe is trying to kick out all those Ukrainians that they so graciously welcomed when the special military operation began.
Yeah, come on in.
Russia.
Now get the hell out and go back and fight and die.
They're calling them cowards for having come in the first place. That's interesting. We're also going to talk about how, sorry, I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah, just keep going.
Okay, I'll just keep going. The World Economic Forum says that if you are feeling the pain of the economy, you're wrong. You're totally fine. They have a new way to measure economy, and it has to do with sustainability and diversity. So if your economy does that, but you can't eat, you're okay. We're going to tell you how they're doing math now. It's stinking crazy. All that and more as Redacted starts right now.
Welcome in, everybody, to the big show. Thank you guys for joining us today. Let us know where you're joining us from in the chat. We are live at 4 p.m. Eastern time, and I saw a kind email from someone else today that said, hey, I love the introduction to your show, and that's why I like to hang out before the show. Yes, we start at 4 p.m. Eastern, but if you'd like to hang out early, we do a pre-show. It's very informative. We show you a lot of great clips and things that I think you should know about. By the way, if you subscribe to the big show, your name will pop up here during the live show. It'll pop up here. If you're, it's a free subscription. It's totally free to follow us on Rumble and YouTube, and your name will pop right up there on the big screen, right underneath our massive national debt, which is $34 trillion right now. So we're going to actually talk about that a little bit later in the show, how the massive amount of U.S. debt is just a ticking time bomb for the United States, but it's all part of their plan. So we'll talk about that a little bit later.
If that clock started going backwards, like, would we also start to go backwards in our show? It would like totally mess up the whole space-time continuum. I wouldn't know what to do.
Right, like if this starts going down,
right,
I would need to check something.
Then I would start talking backwards like Ace Ventura.
Something happening here? Like this is going back.
Step out in your yard, look up for the mothership, because that's how it's going right now.
Yeah.
I mean, how in the world do they plan to pay this off? I guess the answer is they won't, and they'll just devalue the U.S. dollar and currency until there's nothing left of it, and they move us all over to CBDCs and central bank digital currencies. But maybe we need a DeLorean.
I read a book once, and I'm going to have to try and find this, that said that the interest alone on that debt exceeds GDP per year.
Well, the interest now, already in the past few weeks, the interest on this debt now exceeds $1.1 or $1.2 trillion, more than we spend on our entire military budget for the year. Just the interest payments alone on this. Can you imagine that?
Yes,
that's why they want to devalue the dollar, because there's no way you can make the payments anymore. Go ahead, David.
It'd be cool to, if you, like you said, to have a time machine to go back and tell the founding fathers in 1776, hey, in 2023 we'll have 34 trillion in debt, and just see their reaction. Like, okay, we need to make some changes to this.
They've never even heard the word trillion before, so they don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
Hey, we've got a daily newsletter. We'd love for you all to subscribe. We had about 800 of you subscribe to the newsletter last night. It's totally free to join us, and you get the newsletter every day over your cup of coffee. Just go to redacted.inc, put in your email address. You will receive a welcome email from me. You just need to drag it over to your inbox because it might go to your spam folder or your junk folder. You know, Google labels us as dangerous, so they've actually put us in a dangerous folder because we tell the truth. David Creighton, our friend up in Canada, sent me a note about how Google has now setting up some weird special event, which is like, hey, if there's a dangerous or special event that occurs, our services might be interrupted. Like Google is like pre-warning us now that something big is about to happen. So Google's on to us. Anyway, go to redacted.inc, put in your email address, grab our free newsletter, and it'll publish tomorrow morning around 7 a.m. Eastern time. We cover about 4 or 5 of the big stories of the day, and we try to make it entertaining, and you can read it in about 5 or 10 minutes. So pretty easy to do. All right. So we've got a busy show for you on this Wednesday. Let's talk. I mean, we're still feeling the fallout, of course, around everything that happened in Iowa. So I'll ask this question. Is a military coup being orchestrated in case of a Trump victory in 2024? Well, a military takeover of the United States government. It appears that is the case, according to a stunning report from NBC News, which we'll get to that bombshell piece of the story in a moment. But first, why would they be concerned about Trump? Well, this week, of course, President Trump won the Iowa Republican caucus by the highest margin in history.
So based on the first results and our Fox News voter analysis, the Fox News decision desk can now project that former President Donald Trump will win the Iowa caucuses.
He will take the lion's share of the state's 40 delegates. This result really solidifies his place as the current frontrunner for the nomination.
Clearly, DeSantis came in a distant second place. The deep state's favorite candidate, Nikki Haley, in third place. Vivek Ramaswamy, of course, has ended his campaign and endorsed Donald Trump. They had a big event yesterday, and it was a lot of glad handing and hugging, and there's a lot of discussion. People were yelling out in the audience, VP for Vivek. And so we'll see about that. Nikki Haley said she won't do any more debates, so they've been canceled. So now what? Well, now the deep state, the CIA, has a decision to make. End Trump's chances now before people have a chance to vote. Or wait until he's president and foment a coup. An inside government takeover. That appears to be what they're going to do. An inside government takeover, that appears to be the second option. That's what they're going with. Laura Logan, fantastic journalist Laura Logan, says the real fascists are the ones afraid of the people. They never meant it when they said this was a government of the people, for the people, by the people. That was supposed to control, not be exercised. The people are taking their government back from the elites, and the elites can't stand it. So what are the elites going to do if Nikki Haley can't beat Trump? They want her to beat Trump. They're setting her up to try to beat Trump. All the money is going to Nikki Haley right now. On purpose. Well, according to NBC, they're going to take the military away from Trump. In other words, a coup. There's no other way to slice it. According to a report in NBC News, which is not some far-right publication, Democratic lawmakers, advocacy groups, former government officials are, quote, quietly devising plans to stop former President Donald Trump from taking control of the United States military if elected president in 2024, in November of this year.
Like Myanmar?
Yeah, like Myanmar. Like, this isn't Bolivia, right? We're turning into like a banana republic here. This is mainstream American NBC News telling us this. This isn't like some publication on some what people would say is an extremist right-wing website or something like that. No, this is NBC News telling us what the deep state is planning. The NBC News report is titled this: Fears grow that Trump will use the military in dictatorial ways if he returns to the White House, among those being mentioned for Trump's defense secretary, et cetera, et cetera. Fears grow Trump will use the military. And this report details how the deep state has created a, quote, loose-knit network of public interest groups and lawmakers that are preparing to foil any efforts for Trump to use the military to carry out his political agenda, essentially wresting control of the military away from Trump. You can't make this up. I mean, this is literally in the text. You can read it for yourselves.
But Biden is using the military to start endless wars and continue endless wars. So he can use the military if it's actually being used to continue to kill people. Bonus points if they're brown people.
Right, but with this NBC News report, which we'll go in more detail here in a second, is the idea that, oh, what if Trump uses the military to go after political adversaries? Oh, you mean like how the Biden administration weaponized the Department of Justice to go after political enemies?
Right.
Right? I mean, so Biden, to your point, is literally doing what they're worried that Trump will do. And they're worried that he will then use the Department of Justice to go after political enemies. He'll use the military to go after political enemies, and he will become an authoritarian leader. Former Trump Pentagon advisor Colonel Douglas Macgregor.
Can you, just before you make that point, though, because I read the book by the special investigators of the Mueller investigation, Andrew Weissman, and they tried really hard to accuse Trump of misusing power during their investigations, and they could not conclusively find it. So we have precedents of him being in the White House.
We have 4 years of precedents.
They tried to prove that he was doing just that and were unable.
Yeah.
And so it's such a baseless fear, and we have a guy doing it.
Right. But this is what the liberals and liberal media are concerned about. Oh, and by the way, the neocons. So the Nikki Haley wing.
My point is, I don't really think that they believe it themselves.
Well, that's what Colonel Douglas Macgregor, I think he thinks that they don't believe it themselves either. And yet they're doing it anyway. And they've done it to great success already. Listen to what Colonel Macgregor just told me.
Officers, it's pure bullshit. I mean, it's just nonsense. So, and they've also tried to essentially turn it into a non-white organization. I mean, that's obvious. Look at the picks that they've made. So I know, no doubt that's probably real in their minds. Now, will it work the way they want it to? I don't know. They could end up with a very divided military that doesn't do what they want it to do. You know, remember that they wanted to get rid of everybody and anybody who remotely leaned to the right in the General Officer Corps and the admirals in the Navy. So they've succeeded.
They've succeeded. So they want to remake the Pentagon. They want to do this. It's total bullshit, what Colonel Macgregor says, but it's absolutely, they've done it before. And what's to stop them from doing it now? Now, though, they've all gone on the record. These people have gone on the record to NBC News. These aren't like anonymous sources floating around. No. So let's go through this NBC News report because there are off-the-record sources, but a lot of people on the record telling NBC exactly what they plan to do to Trump. NBC, of course, has deep connections to the Pentagon and the CIA. You can read the Cato Institute's report on how members of the CIA went to work for NBC News. So there's a deep connection here with the intelligence community and NBC News. Journalist Paul Sperry also confirming the NBC News report, saying, breaking, Obama DOJ official Mary McCord, part of General Flynn Coup, secretly worked with the January 6th committee's Red Team and Purple Team investigators. Quote, we're already starting to put together a team to think through the most damaging types of things Trump might do, end quote. They're building a team to undermine a future president of the United States. So let's just go through this NBC News report a little bit more in depth here because it's absolutely bonkers and crazy. You can just kind of roll it here on the screen, Philip. America's commander-in-chief has vast powers at his disposal, some well-known, others not so much. Some lawmakers and pro-democracy advocates worried there may be nothing stopping a president from mobilizing the military to intervene in elections, police American streets, or quash domestic protests. Some lawmakers on Capitol Hill worry that Trump might invoke the Insurrectionist Act to involve the armed forces in the face of domestic protests or if the midterm elections don't go his way. One of my favorite quotes, though, is from Senator Richard Blumenthal, is crafting a bill that would clarify the Insurrectionist Act and give Congress and courts some say in its use instead of the president. and chances of passage are slim, given that Republicans control the House and are largely loyal to Trump. And he says, Richard Blumenthal says, there are an array of horrors that could result from Donald Trump's unrestricted use of the Insurrection Act, Blumenthal said in an interview. A malignantly motivated president could use it in a vast variety of dictatorial ways unless at some point the military itself resisted what they deemed to be an unlawful order. I mean, it goes on and on and on in here.
But I do recall that this was part of the narrative in the 2016 campaign as well. They said that a lot of military people are telling high-up media sources that they won't follow Trump's command because he's a blowhard and they don't like him. So they did try this before. This is a repeat. Whether or not they're actually sources who are intending on doing it this time around is a different story.
Well, we already know Mark Milley did. We already know that related to the January 6th and even before that.
Yeah.
And Trump's ability to use nuclear weapons or have access to certain types of weapons, that the president, the commander-in-chief of the military. Under the Constitution of the United States, he is the commander-in-chief of the U.S. military. So when you have literally members of Congress, a loose-knit organization, Democrats and otherwise, who are saying they're going to wrest control of the military away from the commander-in-chief, that's not the United States of America. That is a coup.
Yes,
that is something entirely different. The United States president has the power of the military. That's how it's always been. And by the way, wait a second. You're worried that the president of the United States might actually put American troops, American forces in the streets of the United States? What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? In fact, for decades, the United States military was stationed at the U.S. southern border for decades. That's why people didn't come across the border. So what's wrong with actually stationing American troops at the southern border again? Would that be an insurrection? Would that be a violation of the Constitution? No, it's in the president's authority. And many, many Republican presidents and Democratic presidents have done so and used the U.S. military to protect our nation. What about having people, American forces, actually in the streets of America to protect our cities right now? Have you seen the crime wave that's sweeping our country? There's an idea. Would it be so bad, actually, to have American forces actually being used here at home instead of in Syria or in Yemen, for crying out loud, or being sent to Israel? We could use the National Guard, which is supposed to be here to guard nationally our country, here in the United States instead of being sent to Somalia, which they're being done, which is happening. It's just an idea. So they're so scared about that. I'm just kind of appalled at that idea. It's
well, they'll call it racist. Like, oh, you're really just going to go out there to target brown people because we don't like anyone who is mean to brown people on American soil. We just love to kill them on their own soil. Right. So once you get to Somalia, we don't care about you and we'll gun you down, right? But here, anyone who's bad to you, we'll call racist.
It's unbelievable. William Cohen, of course, former Clinton administration official. Here's another great quote in this piece from NBC News. He's a clear and present danger to our democracy, says William Cohen, former Republican senator from Maine, defense secretary in the Clinton administration, who is not involved in the loose-knit network. So NBC has outed these people. His support is solid, and I don't think people understand what living in a dictatorship would mean. So NBC really has the information about what this loose-knit network of undermining military coup individuals is. Maybe they should come forward, because we've been told that the greatest threat to our democracy is white MAGA extremists. But here NBC News is literally explaining that a threat to our democracy is a loose-knit group of liberal donors and groups and interest groups that are going to undermine our democracy. Maybe NBC News should call the FBI and give them the names of these individuals that are literally going to foment a coup in the United States.
Good idea.
They're probably so freaking busy right now still going after January 6 grandmas who drove by the Capitol that afternoon. And I don't think I'm being hyperbolic here, but we were told the greatest threat to democracy are MAGA extremists. Here, NBC is telling us that there's a group that they know about that's trying to undermine our democracy and our Constitution. It's not just the United States deep state that works in lockstep with, it's not just us, it's the deep state that's also working in lockstep with the United Kingdom, the UK government as well. Here's Sky News in England laying out the exact same claims about Trump. They released these reports almost simultaneously. Oh, do you think they're in collusion? Donald Trump re-election could threaten UK's national security, claims ex-MI6 boss. I mean, it's laughable. General Mike Flynn, who knows a thing or two about coup attempts to come after him, tweeted this: "The American people will not be fooled again. These people are the real danger to democracy." Hey, took the words out of my mouth. And they are supported by their rhino establishment counterparts who are all out to benefit themselves more than benefit our country. Important primaries happening across our country, starting with Iowa. Americans need to get out and vote in droves for America First candidates across the board. Let's overwhelm them where it still matters. Because Laura Logan, as I mentioned, has a theory as to who's running the deep state. So who's behind all of this? She seems to know. She says the deep state that's try to stop the Trump operation, Q. Q is the highest level of security clearance. QAnon was created to discredit Q. The only way for people to see the whole truth is to unmask the Anons behind the QAnon. It's not General Flynn, that's for sure. My money is on Stan McChrystal and his team of operatives who have been running this operation out of his Arlington office for a few years. And your idea? And your idea? So this is what's happening. And, you know, as American voters and people who care deeply about the future of our country and what happens to the United States of America as a beacon of liberty and hope for the world, when you literally have the U.S. Constitution being undermined and and NBC News reporting on it with a group of individuals who plan to do it, I think it's time for us to take action, do something about this.
In my opinion, this is an incitement of violence too, because they're saying that they're doing the very same thing that they've accused Trump of doing out on his campaigning, which is inciting Americans. But like, what are they doing? They're saying that MAGA are extremists, and if this guy takes over the country, we're all doomed. I mean, that is an incitement of violence.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
Yeah, let us know what you think about this in the chat. We got a lot of super chats on this tonight, so let me just take a few of them here. They are presenting the narrative. What needs to be done, should be done, is to arrest and charge those of the corrupt. The military would be used to arrest government officials guilty of corruption. Yelling dictator.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of other. Thank you for your super chats here. So I'm, really angry about this. As you can tell, reading this, it just makes me absolutely furious. And the double standard here is, it's unbelievable. To your point earlier about President Biden and what they've been trying to level against Trump for years, and they have no evidence of it. But what Biden is currently doing, they have full evidence of it. Where's the investigation? Where's the concern from liberals about what President Biden is doing? Going after political opponents. Are you worried about that at all? Are you concerned about that? Let us know in the comments below.
Again, we're not here to promote any one candidate, but when your narrative revolves around you lacking curiosity about holes in your stories, then you're doing a disservice. And that's what the journalists are doing right now. And by reporting this bit, that a Trump presidency would be handicapped because there are people who would not obey him, right? You are inciting, what is the word they use? Inciting insurrection. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
And so whoever is doing this is doing the same thing that we're accusing the Trump campaign of, the Trump camp.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Anyway. And as Americans, we should all be upset about this and worried about this, and make your votes count. Make sure you're voting and making sure that you're going out and being a part of this process right now and letting them know where you stand on this. They're freaking out clearly because they want Nikki Haley in there. And that's where the money is going right now. Let us know your thoughts on this. We've got more news to get to here on your Wednesday. We're going to look at why Europe wants Ukrainians booted out of their countries. You know, European countries from Spain to the UK, all over the place. Germany, hey, come on in, Ukrainians. You're welcome here. You're welcome here, right? And now they're not. And they're being asked in many areas to get out, go back and fight. In fact, they're being called cowards by one European member of parliament. We'll tell you who that is, for not going back and fighting Putin. So we'll get to that in a moment. But first,
we want to tell you about our friends over at Nom Nom Now. Let's talk about cuter things, more adorable things like your family pet. Because if your dog is not feeling your food, it's not even usually clear. But when they love their meals, you can tell. From a peppy step to a healthy coat, wagging that tail. That's what happens when you switch their diet over to Nom Nom. Nom Nom has already delivered over 40 million meals to good dogs like yours, inspiring millions of clean bowls and wagging tails. That's because it's a pet food delivery service made with freshly made dog food with every portion personalized to your dog's needs, or doganalized. I don't think you can use personalized about dogs, can you? Doganalized.
Doganalized?
I don't know if that works. So you can bring out their best. Nom Nom's made with real wholesome ingredients that you can see and recognize without any additives or fillers that contribute to bloating and low energy, because dogs are just like us, and a diet of heavy processed food that looks like crackers or something obviously is not in their best interest. Nom Nom, again, comes with a money-back guarantee. So if your dog isn't wagging their tail, within 30 days, Nom Nom will refund your first order. So give it a try. Go right now for 50% off of your no-risk 2-week trial at trynom.com/redacted. That's spelled trynom.com/redacted for 50% off. One more time, trynom.com/redacted.
And yes, we do have a few sponsors in our show, by the way. It's how we're able to pay for our staff and keep the show going. So it's a free show, and we usually have about 3 sponsors per show, kind of in between our segments. So if you're new to the program, like when I used to do Fox and Friends, I had about 80 commercials. We have 3 here on our show. So we try to keep it short and sweet, but it keeps the lights on here, and it's able to pay for our staff and what we do here.
So support them, and while you're at it, tell us the name of your pet.
Yeah,
so that we can have a conversation in the chat that maybe is a little bit more, with a little more levity. Do that.
If it keeps the lights on there, can it by chance fix that salt lamp behind Natalie?
This drives David crazy.
Oh, it's blinking. Oh, yeah. I'm going to fix that.
Which one is he talking about?
Over your left shoulder there. This one here. Yeah, this one here.
It's not doing too bad today, but some days it goes on a rampage.
This one right here that
It depends on, like, if you get angry, it's like you're like Odin. And so it like picks up, or you're like Zeus or whatever. It picks up the energy and like starts like getting kind of crazy.
Okay, well, let's see, because I'm going to get really pissed off when we talk about Ukraine. Are you ready for that?
Yeah,
Are you ready?
What Europe's about face on this is kind of remarkable right now.
This is one of those segments where I'm going to tell you how they're all lying to you, and it's going to just piss you off, but we're going to do it anyway.
Okay,
are you ready?
Great.
Okay.
Great.
I'm warning you, you're going to be mad.
But you know what's so...
And the segment after this, I'm still mad about, and I researched it about 8 hours ago.
I should point out that I think it's useful and instructive because there are still so many fools out there, and you might be surrounded by fools in your life. You know, you might have fools in your family. You might have fools that you know at work. And so when you see a segment like we're about to unleash on you here on Ukraine, this is one of those segments where hopefully you can send it to one of these uneducated people in your lives who are still like, Putin's a madman, Zelensky's a hero, and there's nothing wrong in Ukraine at all. So this is one of those segments hopefully will educate
anybody
people
who says, yes, we need to keep sending weapons to Ukraine or keep supporting Ukraine. They are unstudied and uneducated. And I love when I get tagged on things on X where people are like, what are you talking about? So I'm going to give you a good summary. You could send this to any idiot who says weapons for Ukraine. So here we go. Europe is calling Ukrainians who don't want to die for a war based on a lie cowards and now they want to kick them out so they can be conscripted to the army to die. I'm going to show you an Estonian member of parliament saying that men who left Ukraine are cowards. But before I play this, I just would like you to, in your mind, rewind the clock about 20 months. When accepting Ukrainian refugees was the modus operandi for virtue signaling. Remember that? Anyone you knew who was collecting antibiotics or food or baby car seats for families for Ukraine, oh my gosh, those people were Mother Teresa because the whole world was all in on accepting Ukrainian refugees. Not anymore. Now we want to round them up like cattle and send them to the front lines to die. Here is MP Jack Madison from Estonia saying so in Parliament this week.
Last week, we had the honor to welcome Mr. Zelensky in Tallinn, and he said very clearly, they need men. They need more men because thousands of men have died, also from the Ukrainian side. But in Europe, we have almost 800,000 Ukrainian men who have illegally, breaking the Ukrainian laws, escaped from Ukraine as cowards. And we need to help Ukraine with those men and also with a military aid that they will not die in Ukraine, that they will fight for Ukraine and they will win this war.
Wow. So wait a minute. Wait. We need to round up these men in Europe, and we need to also make sure they won't die, but we need to send them to fight. You can follow the logic here? We need to round up these men in Europe that we gave safe haven to, and we need to send them back, but we need to make sure they don't die, but we do need to send them to the front lines to fight for Ukraine.
Well, that
where
logic
they will
doesn't
die.
work because everyone who's already gone there is dead.
Right.
And so you wouldn't need them if the people fighting were not already dying.
Yeah, he's making the point that Zelensky was here saying we need men. We're out of men. We need men.
Yeah.
Where'd they go?
To
They go on vacation?
volunteer? Why doesn't that guy strap on some boots and go out? Because politicians are still selling this lie about the war in Ukraine, which we're going to go over again, all the lies. Liar numero uno this week at the Davos World Economic Forum is NATO head Jens Stoltenberg. He is lying loudly. And I'm going to let him tell you all these lies, and then I'm just going to list them because it's just too easy.
Of armed vehicles, hundreds of planes. This is something that matters for Russia and for ordinary Russians. Their economy is struggling. They are paying a high economic price. They are paying a high political price. They are more politically isolated, also in the near abroad, in Caucasus and Central Asia. And so what we can do is not to predict with certainty what will happen, but what we can do is to just maximize the likelihood that at some stage President Putin will understand that to continue this war will have a too high price, and then at some stage he has to sit down and negotiate some kind of just lasting peace where Ukraine prevails as a sovereign independent nation. And the paradox is that if we want that to happen, a peaceful, just end to this war, the way to get there is more weapons to Ukraine. So the more credible we are in our military support, the more likely it is that the diplomats will succeed. Because what happens around the negotiating table with diplomats is so closely linked to the situation on the battlefield. There are no indications that Putin is planning for peace now, but he will when he realizes that we will not give up, that we have the military strength to support Ukraine, and then he will sit down and the diplomats can.
So Albert Einstein,
armed vehicles, hundreds of planes.
Okay.
So Albert Einstein, said insanity is doing something over and over again and expecting a different result, right?
Right. What makes me mad about that is not that they're just repeating lies and expecting the same thing. It's that everyone in the room allowed it. No one stood up and said, those are lies. I'm going to do it, but I wasn't invited and I wasn't in the room. I don't imagine that anyone who knows the truth would not want to do what I'm about to do. So let me go through it. Sir, you're lying. Let me give you 3 examples. First one, the Russian economy is not suffering. Last year at this same Davos panel, you jerks said that the Russian economy would contract by 6%. It didn't. It grew by 3.5%. That's lie number 1. So that pressure point that you're promising us is non-existing. Number 2, Russia is losing more lives than Ukraine. False. so demonstrably false. Ukraine has lost so many young men now that the average age of their soldier is 43, and they have to close universities because the college-age men are dead. And then lie number 3, the paradox, he says, if we want peace, we have to get more war and war weapons. That is so idiotic, I don't even have to point out why that's a lie. It has not worked out that way, and we are almost 2 years into the special military operation. Now, another thing he lied about, he lied when he said that Ukraine was winning. This is a bonus lie. I know I only promised you 3, I'm on the 4th one. I cannot let that go. Ukraine is not winning, so let's just go over a short history and revision of the map of why. Ukraine has been attacking the ethnic Russian area of the Donbass since the 2014 Maidan coup in order to shut down people who opposed Ukraine aligning with the West. They did that in Crimea too, but Russia came in, pushed back the Ukrainian attackers, and offered Crimea a chance to join Russia after a vote, which Crimea overwhelmingly voted for, and the Obama administration then lied to us and called it an illegal annexation. Wasn't illegal, those people chose it. Meanwhile, the people in the Donbass were hoping they would get the same offer for 10 years. Look at this Time magazine article from 2014 telling us that the people there were waiting in Ukraine for Russia to offer them the same deal as Crimea. The IMF at the time warned Ukraine to stop attacking these people since 2014 because it was costing them $1 million per day. Look at this article from 2015. We have known that Ukraine has been attacking these people for 10 years. So in 2022, the mayors of those regions asked Russia to come in, offer them the same thing as Crimea, protection and annexation, and that happened. The special military operation happened after Russian parliament chose this, not Vladimir Putin on a personal whim. That's another lie. And then in September of 2022, those people did overwhelmingly vote to join Russia, which we knew they wanted for a decade. Russia has never said that they wanted all of Ukraine. So when Jens Stoltenberg says, well, it's a win because Russia doesn't have Ukraine, Ukraine is still sovereign, they never wanted it. That's a lie. And again, they're selling us a fear that Russia wants to take over the whole world. So Ukraine fighting, making people die, forcing people to take land back that doesn't want to be a part of Ukraine, that they've been abusing for 10 years, and we're using our tax money and weapons to support that. So what is it that they've won? Well, here's a map of the war since the counteroffensive started last June. You can see they have not taken back any land, all those lives lost, and it looks the same today as it did about 18 months ago. So when Stoltenberg says that Ukraine is winning, that is a huge lie. This week, Ukrainian commander Alexander Syrsky said that his troops are now on this active defense mode. That's what they're calling it. They're going to sell us this. It's not a counteroffensive because we're not going to get that land back, but it's active defense. So basically to keep Russia on their toes. We're just going to keep hanging out at that border I showed you. Active defense. So no matter how you sell it, it's still a pointless war based on so many lies. And now that's why they're telling us that disinformation is the biggest problem in the world. At Davos, they also said, bigger than anything else, not war, not famine, not climate change, is disinformation, because they need a direct route to keep selling you lies. Here is another liar in chief, Ursula von der Leyen, telling us...
Sure, it's in her name.
Right, von der Leyen, that this is such a big problem. She says specifically for business, which I guess she means is the business of war and lies. Watch.
For the global business community, the top concern for the next 2 years is not conflict or climate. It is disinformation and misinformation, followed closely by polarization within our societies. These risks are serious because they limit our ability to tackle the big global challenges we are facing. Changes in our climate, and our geopolitical climate, shifts in our demography and in our technology, spiraling regional conflicts and intensified geopolitical competition and their impacts on supply chains. The sobering reality is that we are once again competing more intensely across countries than we have in several decades. And this makes the theme of this year's Davos meeting even more relevant: rebuilding trust. This is not a time for conflicts or polarization. This is a time to build trust. This is a time to drive global collaboration more than ever before. This requires immediate and structural responses to match the size of the global challenges. I believe it can be done.
Oh, good.
Okay, she does.
So misinformation is the greatest threat that these
Yeah.
countries face. I feel it every
Which is
day.
funny 'cause
when I wake up in the morning, I feel that misinformation and I worry about it for my family.
I like this comment from General Buck in the chat. I agree, their disinformation is a problem. Go ahead, Philip.
Well, I like that she prefaced it with the business community, because like what business is fear? What business fears misinformation? What they consider misinformation or information? It's not Lego. Nobody's got, it's like Lego's not like, oh man, people are saying bad things about us. It's usually more sinister corporations like the biopharmaceuticals, the military industrial complex.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they definitely fear information, but
Right.
the majority of businesses don't.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Like.
Yeah, I mean, when
that was my point.
Pfizer is definitely concerned about it.
She means
GlaxoSmithKline, Johnson & Johnson.
The businesses that support me, basically.
Right. Yeah, the ones that literally where she made millions of dollars off of pushing additional vaccines and so forth in Europe and on and on. So those businesses, that's what she's really concerned about.
Right. So let us know what you think of all of these mountains of lies. Do you see them going through your feed on X or in other places? Do you see them for the blatant lies that they are? Do you see now the hypocrisy of all of the Western countries that took in Ukrainian refugees and now want to send them back to die based on a lie? I don't know how many times I've said lie. If you were taking shots when I did that, you would be super drunk. But that was a segment full of lies. I'm going to tell you next, coming up after the break, how they're going to lie to you about the economy. This one's so rich. You can tell I'm on fire about the World Economic Forum. This is the event that keeps giving here on Redacted. It's kept us really busy this week.
Yeah, I don't know. They're giving us a pile of crap to sift through.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable. Every time I turn around, I think, oh, they can't say anything more stupid. The sad thing is they can say these things, but behind closed doors, they're actively making these things happen. So this isn't just rhetoric. They are meeting behind closed doors and then actually putting these things into motion and making them happen. Search results, collusion with social media companies, censorship, the massive WHO plan for disease X, climate. All of these things they are actively doing. Just look at what's going on in the Netherlands right now. Germany, farmers protesting. All of the stuff that they're protesting was born out of the World Economic Forum.
Right. Well, the World Economic Forum is trying to tell them, you're not really hurting. We have diversity. So even though you can't pay your bills, we have green energy. So I'm going to tell you exactly how they're spinning that, and it's going to make you laugh out loud.
We're also going to look at the real trouble in the commercial real estate market. Trillions of dollars of potential collapse about to happen in the commercial real estate market, not the residential side. The residential side where people need to live, that's in fact likely to see an explosion of prices in the next few weeks here as we head into the spring. But commercial real estate, the closing of office spaces, and then this massive, massive debt. We're going to dive deeply into that with a special guest on the show in just a few minutes. But first, we do want to tell you about our friends over at BioOptimizers. Do we not? Because we need a good night's sleep. And we all need to be able to sleep a little bit better. And one of the ways to do that is with magnesium. And magnesium from our friends at BioOptimizers is the perfect way to get a good night's sleep. They have over 300 enzymatic reactions in the body with their magnesium supplement. Pretty much every function in your body gets upgraded when you take magnesium, giving you an amazing night's sleep. To brain function as well, your brain function and sleep, from metabolism to lowering your stress levels. And let's face it, even if your 2024 resolution is not to focus on your health, as it is mine, how are you really going to be able to achieve all of your goals without quality sleep and stress management support? Really? So do yourself a favor, make Magnesium Breakthrough part of your daily routine this year so you can get the vitality you need to conquer your dreams. Go to biooptimizers.com/redacted right now and enter the promo code redacted at checkout. Get 10% off any order. Again, that's biooptimizers.com/redacted.
All right. Well, the World Economic Forum says you're fine. The economy is not bad. And if you're struggling to make ends meet, it's all in your head. You're okay. If you think the economy is bad, that's a lie. They have not destroyed any economies with their warmongering and, transfer of wealth to the wealthy. No, you're all right. You have enough. You're not hurting because leaders have destroyed our economies for war. Shut up. Stop protesting. We have diversity. We have inclusiveness. We're going to show you that. This is what the World Economic Forum wants you to think. My jaw hit the floor today when I received this news release. We're going to go through it. They're saying it's a new measure of quality of growth. Quality, they're saying. So even though economic measures are not good, growth is down, everything's more expensive. This is what they're saying, and I'm going to show it to you. Don't worry. I know you can't read that. We're going to zoom in a minute. What they're saying is, everything's bad, but instead the economy is super great, though, when you look at factors like inclusion, sustainability, and resilience goals. So you can't pay for food for your family, but hey, things are sustainable. So you're fine. This reminds me of this episode of 30 Rock where Avery is kidnapped and she has to deliver the news in North Korea, and she's forced to say this.
And in food news, you've had enough to eat today.
That's supposed to be a joke, but it's literally what the World Economic Forum is saying. So let's take a look at what they're saying. They're saying we have a new framework about how to measure economies. It takes a holistic look at GDP alongside the quality of growth across 107 economies. It's focusing on, yes, we have an economic slowdown and we're estimated to fall to the lowest rate in 3 decades by 2030 amid ongoing economic and geopolitical shocks. But hey, we have this new thing called the Future of Growth Initiative.
But otherwise, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the theater last night?
Aimed at a new narrative for economic growth and supporting policymakers from around the world, together with economists and other experts, in identifying the best pathways to balance growth, innovation, inclusion, sustainability, and resilience goals. So, we don't need math anymore because the math tells us that the economy looks like this. Yeah, that's bad, right? When you look at how we have been stagnant in growth in the last 20 years or so. They say, though, it's not that bad if you use a metric called the inclusiveness pillar.
So new math. Let's roll out the Biden. This is what the Biden White House did, of course.
Right.
Roll out new math.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I love the chuckles, Philip. What are you chuckling about, please?
Oh, I just love the new math. I love that it had in there that yeah, we know that everything is just absolute shit for everybody right now economically, but
here's our new abacus
metric, so don't you worry. Yeah, exactly. Here's our new abacus.
Here's our new abacus. We've added an extra row of beads over here.
Yeah.
And some of them are square.
Right. Yeah. Math is passé. We don't need that, right? Let's look at how they're using this inclusiveness pillar. It says it measures the extent to which an economy's trajectory includes all stakeholders in the benefits and opportunities it creates, and the resilience dimension, which captures the extent to which an economy's trajectory can withstand and bounce back from shocks. They have the highest average global scores. We're going to talk about how they're scoring this. It's out of 100. It's comical. So when you actually look around at your finances and you feel the pain at the grocery store, you're wrong to think that it's because of a bad economy. You should feel better if your country is doing things about inclusivity and sustainability, because look at how they score these things. On average, the world, or these 107 countries that they looked at, is doing pretty good at innovation. We're going to talk about how they scored this. Inclusiveness, the world's getting a 55. Sustainability, the world is getting 46. Resilience, 52.8. And, this is based on subjective measurements. Look at this chart. Now, I know you're not going to be able to see it. It's going to be a crappy screenshot. I apologize. But basically, this is just a list of things that they asked experts to grade economies on to give them these scores. And then we're going to feed it to the public. So when they bellyache about a bad economy, we're going to be like, no. Your economy is getting a 60%. Or a C+ or whatever, because they do things like green initiative,
green
inclusiveness, wealth inequality, gender parity. So don't worry about it. This is the new grading scale. It's a clear effort to gaslight people who are upset that their leaders have destroyed their economies, most of them in attendance.
It's a participation award for the world. Right.
And by the way,
congratulations, buddy. You're doing a lot better than you think.
And it's not even that good. I mean, you look at those numbers. So wait a minute, 45% for innovativeness, right? And 55% for inclusivity.
Well, it's not really a percent, because if you look at how it was scored, it's like, let's look at the inclusiveness scale. If, a country has healthy diet affordability, they get like 8 points. And so if you think, well, okay, the UK has healthy diet affordability, well, I wouldn't score that very high because food's expensive in the UK.
But my point is, look at the difference here. The spread, 45% for innovativeness.
But they're not percentages, they're scores.
Well, even still, 45.
Yeah, but they're out of 100.
Right, it's out of 100. So 45 to 55. So you care, like, they're getting higher scores for inclusiveness rather than innovating and research and development and doing things, right?
Yes.
So they're doing more about inclusivity and diversity, which is what we just talked about the other night with Alaska Airlines and airline innovation, right? Where they're taking money away from research and development, and you wonder why airplanes are falling apart. And they're focusing on making sure that women and people of color are now flying the planes.
Right.
Yeah, and like where in this chart is the can buy groceries number? Where's that one at? Or can get gas to go to work? I don't see those numbers on there.
Rent not skyrocketing.
Innovation.
Yeah.
No,
exactly.
But you get points for budget pluralism. I'm not exactly sure what that is. Green patents, civil rights. Social mobility, gender parity in the labor force. So, you may think, my economy sucks. I hate living here and I hate my leaders. Oh, but, at least there's more women working at the business down the road, I guess. It's a clear attempt to gaslight people who are upset that their leaders have destroyed their economies with war, climate activism, all of these things we talk about. And it's insulting to the working class people that are protesting because diversity does not help them put food on the table. This was Clayton last week at the massive German farmer protest, where they said they are hurting because of the economy created by politicians.
Did you come here? Well, we are, we stand together for the farmers of what the government is doing to us, raising the prices, taking all the money from us and then throwing it out to other countries where it would be much better to use it for our infrastructure.
So I've seen some other farmers say, money being sent to Ukraine, and when money could be better spent here with our own farmers and helping our own government.
Yeah, because I find it the most important people also here is the farmers, because without them, the whole infrastructure itself would collapse.
No money for war! No money for war. Is that what you said? For oil. No money for war, is that what you said? For war. For war. For war. No money for war, he just yelled.
Okay, so if only those people would look at Germany's inclusivity score, they could just go home. They'd feel better, right? They don't need to be out there.
You're not cold. Your business isn't going under. Your farm isn't collapsing. You can't, grow crops anymore because your government. You're fine because we have inclusivity.
And sustainability, right?
Forget your sweet potatoes and your farm. You have sustainability.
All right, so let us know.
They need to print this up.
Yeah.
Or they need to print those scores up for the U.S. and go out and hand them to people like on the streets in San Francisco who are like, they're in like this full-fledged opioid epidemic and be like, no, you're actually doing all right there, bud. Here, look. There you go.
Here. Well, that's what we do already. And then we also give them additional drugs in San Francisco. So here's your flyer. Here's your inclusivity score.
Right.
And here's some extra drugs.
All the time when I see world leaders lately, I think of that 30 Rock clip. You've had enough to eat.
Right.
You're all right. Knock it off.
We're going to go back to our bunker tonight with Klaus Schwab. By the way, separate. So let us know your thoughts on this in the comments below. There's a separate story. We didn't cover it tonight, but all of the Davos escort services are completely booked up with the call girls and all the Davos escort services.
Is that what we call them?
I don't know what you call them, but that's the escort services in Davos, according to the New York Post and according to Zero Hedge. All of them are booked up. All the ladies are booked up because of these globalists who came to town, and they're charging them like $4,000, a night or an hour or whatever they do.
Is that gender
I bet
parity?
that inclusivity score is pretty high.
Yeah, that's inclusivity.
It's not gender parity if they're all girls.
Well, who knows? Maybe those guys, they're getting some of their trans men out there. Who knows on that? Anyway, that's Davos for you. Those creepy globalists are booking up all the call girls. Let us know your thoughts on that. We've got more news to get to here on your Wednesday. We're going to look at the economy. We're going to look at this debt bubble and what it means for the U.S. dollar. We're also going to look at the commercial real estate collapse. There's a number of very, very disturbing pieces of data coming out of the commercial real estate space. And I'm talking about the closure of offices. Let us know in the comments below, are you seeing a lot of different office spaces closing down? And if you know offices, like do you work in an office, what is maybe the vacancy rate of your office? Do you notice like there's a lot of empty offices when you're going up to your office? That is very, very troubling. The Mad Men era of people reporting to the office is over. So we'll get there in a second. But first,
we want to tell you about our friends over at Provia, because are you one of the many millions of American men and women of any age dealing with premature hair loss or thinning? Maybe you're scared about inheriting that thinning look because it just runs in the family. Well, you can start your year off right with a real resolution that delivers on its promise without the harsh side effects, unwanted chemicals, and no need for a prescription. Provia uses a safe, natural ingredient called Procapil, to effectively target the three main causes of premature hair thinning and loss. So by supporting healthy scalp circulation, the delivery of nourishing nutrients, and healthy hair follicles anchoring to your scalp, Provia guarantees more hair on your head than in the shower or on your comb. It's effective for men and women of any age and safe on colored, treated, or styled hair. And it's that easy. Right now, new customers save over 50% plus free shipping on Provia's introductory package. You have to go to proviahair.com/redacted, and every package includes a full 60-day supply of Provia serum for daily use, plus the Provia super concentrate for faster, more noticeable results. And every order includes your choice of a free gift right now at checkout. So Provia works, guaranteed, or 100% your money back. Don't wait. Order now and save an extra 10% plus free shipping at proviahair.com/redacted. One more time, proviahair.com/redacted.
Well, are we headed for an economic upheaval, the likes of which we haven't seen for decades? Well, the Biden administration wants you to believe, of course, the economy is doing great. It's on the upswing, but the numbers don't lie. They're telling a different story. This week, we learned that some of the largest companies in America are laying off thousands of people, and especially in a sector that normally is swimming in money and doing very, very well. The tech sector, we're seeing Apple, Amazon, Google, and more laying off thousands of people. All eyes on a 2024 recession. Of course, this is the time period we were most worried about. After Christmas, after those temporary hires had all left those jobs, We were talking about January and February. Experts were predicting this recession hitting right around this time. Are they correct? This could explain also why gold prices are surging to all-time highs. Uranium prices are surging to all-time highs. So commodities and precious metals, certainly something that are surging right now. And someone who knows all about that and has been watching this economic conditions very, very closely is the founder of Lear Capital, good friend of the show, Kevin Demerit. We wanted to bring on to dive into this recessionary period we might be heading into. Well, I'll just ask you, Kevin. I don't want to put words in your mouth. You look at this data every day. There seems to be a lot more trouble on the horizon for 2024. I'm always a glass half full kind of guy. I don't want a recession. I want good times ahead. I don't want any of my, any of my investments to be hurt in any kind of way, and I want my family to be protected. But what are you seeing right now in terms of broader market conditions?
Well, Clayton, we're just literally drowning in a record $34 trillion in government debt, with interest payments now alone standing at $1 trillion a year and expected to be $1.5 trillion in the next 10 years. Now, that number does not include the $1.5 trillion that the government's going to overspend anyway. So we're probably looking at $2.5 to $3 trillion deficits for the next 5 or 6 years. Personal debt is hitting the roof, with credit card debt at all-time highs. Corporate bankruptcies have soared up 23%. Really, the debt is slowly killing the economy and really could take people's savings and retirement accounts with it, just like we saw in 2008. It's going to be the same type of recession, just different as far as which asset's going to, crash. We have real estate probably pulling back because of the higher interest rates, but you just have the stock market absolutely skyrocketed. And it took 7 years to get back to even from that 2008 recession. I think you're going to see some of the same just because of the enormous amount of debt that has been created on the consumer side, corporate side, and government side.
Well, you brought up a couple of really interesting points. And last night or earlier this week on the show, I forget which day I mentioned it, I was specifically talking about the commercial real estate side. And this bubble, holy smokes. I mean, I'm looking at the data, not on residential real estate, which is where I'm a big investor, right, like where people have to live, right? That's, to me, that is a totally different animal than what's happening in office space stuff right now. Offices closing, data showing 30% of these offices are closing. You have big companies now are just like handing over the keys and defaulting on their mortgages on these office spaces. And my son was even asking me this morning at breakfast. He said, "Daddy, what's happening with, I don't understand. Can you explain this to me in office spaces? What's going on here?" Because I saw a commercial during one of the NFL games to buy warehouse space. I said, what in the world am I watching here? During an NFL game, there's an advertiser where you can buy warehouse space because they're converting offices into warehouses because we need so many Amazon distribution center boxes and things getting sent to people's front doors. So can you talk about the commercial real estate mess right now? I mean, this is a disaster.
Well, it really is a disaster. Look, the values are low, so they go back to the banks when their loans are due, and the banks aren't willing to lend them the money back at the same values that they had 3, 4, 5 years ago. My building's a perfect example. We're 22% vacancy rate here. 22%. They model things out at 3%, 7%, 5%, things like that. Not 22%. The bank looks at it and says, "Hey, look, I can't make a loan when your building is 20% vacant." So if you look across California, I don't know about a lot of other places in the country, but you look in California, you look in New York, you look at some of the larger cities out there, it's a huge problem. And when those loans come due, how are they going to get the financing to continue with a piece of property? They have to give it up, right? I mean, they either have to come up with the money or give it up, and it's kind of hard to come up with hundreds of millions of dollars for some of these large buildings. Really what it feels like to me, Clayton, it feels like the economy after Christmas here is the cartoon where the Road Runner and Wile E. Coyote are chasing each other, and Wile E. Coyote runs off the cliff, and he's just, for that instant, he's hanging there, and then he puts up his sign, bye-bye, and he falls. We're kind of hanging off of the cliff right now, waiting for the bye-bye sign when the recession hits. That's exactly what it feels like.
Oh, yeah, beep, beep, here we go. Like, this is about to happen.
Yeah.
And this is why I do these segments. I want people to protect themselves. I mean, and we'll talk more about that in a moment, but I want people to protect their families. And so when you see people that have got money invested in commercial real estate or office buildings, because they were told a couple of years ago that that was a smart play. You saw all these developments popping up in Brooklyn and, outside of New York City and all these office spaces. And, it's the return to the office space. We're not going back to Mad Men era living anymore. People are not going back to the offices in this way. And this is a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah. Everybody's talking about, is there going to be a recession? Is there not going to be a recession? It makes absolutely no sense if you look at the data. People literally have to wake up on this one, because since the 1970s, an inverted yield curve, which is basically, for everybody that doesn't know, it means the short end of the curve, the interest on the shorter notes, 3, 6, 9 months, 1 year notes, are higher than the long-term notes, which makes no sense. If you want to invest for 10 years, you would think you would get a higher interest rate. In this case, in this inversion, the longer end of the yield, the 10-year note, is trading for less than the current 6-month, 9-month, 1 year yield. Okay. So if you look at that, since the 1970s, an inverted yield curve that has stayed inverted for 6 months has predicted a recession, not 80% of the time or 90% of the time, 100% of the time. We have had an inverted yield curve for 11 months. So over the past 5 decades, 12 months is the average between the inverted yield curve and the beginning of a recession. We're at month 11. So I'm not thinking that I'm trying to figure out if there's going to be a recession. I'm trying to figure out how bad the recession is going to be, because we've never seen this kind of debt in the credit card space. Even in 2008, we've not seen this kind of government type debt. We've not seen $1 trillion in interest payments on government debt. We've not seen any of this before, and it usually catches up to you.
Oh, that's very smart. That's such a great point. Such a great point. It's not whether or not we're in a recession or heading to a recession, it's how bad it's going to be. And to your point about credit card debt, I mean, I just got this report today on the millennial homebuyer report. New research out shows that millennials who are $10,000 in debt, 57%, is double the percentage, 25%, who have $10,000 in savings. So the 1 in 4 millennials have less than $10,000 in savings, and 1 in 8 have has less than $1,000 in savings. They basically have nothing saved, and they're swimming in debt. This is the state of young people in the United States right now. Forget trying to even buy a home.
Oh, yes, the government understands this. New York and some of the other states are already trying to regulate these, buy now, pay later type situations, because they're looking back and saying this is impossible. They can't pay what they've purchased with these buy now, pay later type situations. So the government sees what's happening here. They've already bailed out student loans and some of the other things. They can't keep bailing everybody. You don't become a wealthy nation by printing up more and more and more debt. You become a wealthy nation by saving and balancing a budget and so on and so forth. The whole thing is crazy, Clayton. This is one of the craziest times that I've ever seen. You have government at record amounts of debt. You have the personal debt at absolute record highs. At least in 2002, you could kind of look at the dot-com and say, okay, these business plans are on the back of a napkin. It's probably not going to work. In 2008, when you had, people purchasing 3 and 4 homes at a time with no money down, you can kind of see those things coming. This, you have the government on the personal side, commercial real estate, businesses going bankrupt. This is one of the most concerning times that I have seen in the past 20 years of doing this.
And when we look at precious metals, of course, we talk about gold, we talk about silver. Natalie and I are big investors in both of those precious metals and real estate, of course. We just saw over the past few weeks, we saw gold hitting record high. Now, I think about 6 months ago, you were on the show and you said you thought we were going to see gold over $2,000 an ounce. You were right about that. It is now over $2,000 troy ounce. But you have a new report out, which you just sent me before the show. $3,200 an ounce for gold. And I guess our viewers, if you guys made this available for our viewers, if they want to go and download this, we have where can people find this, by the way, so they could read along with us?
Yeah, so if they are interested, they can give us a phone call at 1-800-613-3557, or they can go to learredacted.com and we will send them a report free of charge. So there's going to be, we don't charge for the report. We're going to do that. And I think I told you at the beginning of this, I always like to do something special on your program. It's just great listeners and very educational. So we're going to give away some Mercury dimes to people. I bought a bag of Mercury dimes. They were minted between 1916 and 1945. We're going to go ahead and give the first 200 callers that want the information and the special report. We'll also give them, a Mercury dime, help them get started in the precious metals market. But
that's cool.
Clayton, in the special report, what we do at the beginning of every year is predict the price of gold. And so we did this year for 2024. We do it at the beginning of almost every year. I don't have a crystal ball, but when you read the report, we use the correlation of U.S. debt to the gold price. Why? Because that correlation stands at 92% since the early 1970s, when they took us off the gold standard, and then you could legally own gold again. So based on the current U.S. deficit projections and where the gold price stands, the price of gold should be $3,200 an ounce over the next 24 months. Again, I don't have a crystal ball, but I don't need one. If you just look at the report and look at the correlation of U.S. debt and gold, it's a highly correlated, 92% correlation. So the gold price rises with the deficit over time. If you go back to 2002, the gold price was $260 an ounce. The U.S. deficit was $6.5 trillion. Last year, the debt broke $33 trillion. The gold price broke over $2,000 an ounce. 400% increase in debt, 700% increase in gold. So you typically see the gold price move at 1.6 times whatever the deficit is increasing. You look at it since the 1970s, it's held up to a 92% correlation. I don't need a crystal ball. I'm not smart enough to get into the stock market and learn all about all the different stocks and mutual funds and so on and so forth. I just concentrate on one thing. That's the correlation, so it's easy to predict where the price of gold is, and 3,200 is where it came up. We haven't been wrong too much. That's where I think it's going, and I think people are going to wake up to the fact that the central banks themselves are buying record amounts of gold for the second year in a row. 2023, they bought a quarter of the entire mining supply. 2002, they bought a quarter of the complete mining supply. You'd have to go all the way back to 1967 to see when they did that before, and gold was up 900% when they started. They're the biggest buyers of gold. They have the most money of any institution out there. They are not stopping. They're increasing their buying because they understand that they continue to print more paper dollars that make our paper dollars that you and I hold worth less, and there's only so much gold. So you put an increased demand on a fixed supply, the gold price is going up because of all the dollars out there. They get it. It's a no-brainer, and that's why I believe that with this deficit and where the price of gold is going to go, people will be happy that they diversified some portion of their portfolio over before this recession hits.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I always say. Like, if you've got a few $1,000s sitting in U.S. dollars right now in your savings account, like Natalie and I have done, we transfer that over to gold and silver, because I don't want, when you have a U.S. dollar sitting in a savings account, it's losing value every day thanks to inflation and thanks to what the Biden administration has done here. It's unbelievable. And to your point about the U.S. debt, we just saw in 3 months' time, the Biden administration added another $1 trillion to our national debt. We've got the big debt clock up here on our screen during our show. And we show it went from 33 trillion to 34 trillion. And that sped up 3-month period that happened. So there's no slowing down to the amount of debt that the United States government is piling on.
Yeah, look, you add $1 trillion in just interest, and then you look at what they're projecting, which is $1.5 trillion. And then you think about what you just said. They added $1 trillion in 3 months. They haven't been right on a budget at any time I can remember. I mean, the Clinton administration got it right for about 1 year, and then it went completely haywire again. So the odds that their bet or their forecast of $1.5 trillion plus the $1.5 trillion in interest is going to be $2.5 trillion this year, impossible. It's going to be $3 to $3.5 trillion by the time we get done.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. It's absolutely crazy to me. I'm just mind-boggling. I don't know how anybody, my son is fascinated about this lately. So he walks up here into our studio and he sees the national debt clock on the wall. And he said, wait a minute, that's how much the United States is in debt? I mean, if you ran a business like that, you would be out of business, right? That's impossible. But the United States government continues to flow with this. Kevin, well, let's throw that 800 number back up here on the screen again. So if people call you, you've got these Mercury dimes. The first, you said 200 people who get this free report will also get a free Mercury dime, right?
Yeah, as many people as want can call in and get, the debt reports, 2024 debt reports, debt and $3,200 gold. So you can go through the correlations that I was talking about. It talks about how to protect a portion of your assets in precious metals. So there's a gold investor's guide in there also. And then, yes, we have 200 Mercury dimes. We're going to place a Mercury dime in the first 200 people that call. We'll go ahead and add that in, and they can call us at 1-800-613-3557 or go to learredacted.com. Just fill out the information there, and we'll get it out that way as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you, my friend. I really appreciate it. We'll keep an eye on what's happening here with, massive, staggering 400% rise in debt, 700% though for gold, which is great. So there you go. I mean, we'll keep an eye on what's happening here and what happens with these wars in the Middle East at the same time. Kevin, great to see you as always. We appreciate you joining us from sunny California out there. Stay safe.
Yeah. Thanks, Clayton.
And thanks so much, Kevin. Really appreciate that. And thanks to all of you for being a part of our show here. We really appreciate it. Let us know in the comments, what are you guys seeing right now in terms of the economic conditions where you live? I'm always curious about that. Drop us a comment here. Are you seeing layoffs? Are you seeing a lot of companies that are hiring? Certainly there's a lot of manufacturing jobs. Certainly a lot of people hiring right now for manufacturing. But of course, a lot of Americans don't want those jobs. There's 1 million manufacturing jobs open in the United States. You want to know why the U.S. southern border is being flooded? Look no further than that, for crying out loud. But I'm curious what you're seeing economically in your area right now. Are you seeing offices closing down? Are you seeing friends being laid off? Just let me know in the comments below. I'm curious about that in our chat room. What's happening there?